A very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. 大家下午好. Now I'm going to touch on these three topics, mainly on Asia transformations stories. Of course, you know, China shouldered most of the blame when things didn't go right. And I think more importantly, if you look at Asia today, I think the story even getting more solid and it's more interesting. Instead of just focusing on one country, China, we would like you to step away from China and look at the rest of the Asia. Yeah? And there are a lot of interesting transformation stories we would like to share with you today. Now, in the coming decade, you will see there are a lot of mega trend that we identify at Eastspring to be able to participate in this investment opportunity that we would like to share with you later on. And last but not least, how do we capture this investment opportunity in Asia? Okay, I'm going to start my presentation with this transformation story and really build on these three pillars. These three pillars basically are the driving force for the Asia transformation story, and you can see there are three pillars here. Number one, we have this diverse Asian economy. Now, if you look at Asia as a whole, right, there are so many countries. The interesting part is that each of these countries is actually going through a different economic cycle at different stages. Give you an example. Mr. Tan talked about how, you know, the challenges in China they have in property, in financial sector. But you look at India today, they're exactly on the opposite side. If you look at India today, right, their property sector, their financial market is basically at a multi-year expansion growth period. So this is very interesting because this is what we want to achieve in a greater portfolio with a broader market positioning. Now you can see a lot of opportunity here in Asia as well, simply because a lot of the countries here in Asia continue to make a lot of structural reform. Now Mr. Tan talks about the reform in China, the commitment to carbon neutrality by 2060. Now, a lot of other countries here in Asia as well are doing the same thing besides China. We look at countries like Korea, we look at countries like even Malaysia and even India are doing that as well. So a lot of structural changes here in Asia, which give a lot of rebalancing opportunity for each of the country here in Asia. That gives us some comfort in the sense that when you invest in Asia, right, despite the fact that there are a lot of volatility in the market and the geopolitical tension and risk, we are seeing some of these countries in Asia continue to rebalance their production value change in order to continue to find sustainable growth model in the region. So we are quite positive on that. And because of the technology advancement, we also see a lot of innovation here in Asia as well, yeah. Not only in Western countries, we are seeing a lot of good idea coming from China, India, even Singapore and Hong Kong. So with that, you know, technology led this sort of innovation, and if you look at the other factor that we always look at is rising consumption in Asia. You look at the middle class in China, you look at middle class in India, even in Indonesia. Essentially, we are looking at a very strong domestic consumption story in Asia. That itself will bring a lot of opportunity in Asia. Now, traditionally, we have a lot of sector, for example, like manufacturing, financial, you even have like healthcare, and these are the traditional economic sector that have done very well. And because of this technology innovation, they will continue to innovate and continue to increase productivity. And as a result of that, we continue to see new economic sector to emerge. For example, EV, clean energy sector, and as well as digital economy. And these are the new economy actually emerging right here in Asia. So we are very excited in the next decade in terms of the investment opportunity. Now, in order for us to achieve this Asia transformation story, you can look at some of the key rebalancing enablers here in Asia. Very, very quickly, I'll just go through with you. A lot of the country here in Asia, basically, the policymakers are very accommodative in terms of improve the business environment. You can see some of the changes here in India as well. They continue to streamline some of the tax regime, continue to work on their labor market kind of policy. That also go through with Malaysia as well, Indonesia. So these are some of the enablers that we continue to see to develop in Asia. Now, if you look at a lot of the countries here in Asia, right, they also continue to expand their physical and digital infrastructure, continue to work on the connectivity for people to reach out to the different markets which are not accessible in the past. So with this key pillar in Asia, we strongly believe there are stories to be told and there are opportunity for investment to be made. Now, why a lot of the global investors start to look at Asia? For two reasons. Number one, you can look at the consumer expenditure. Now, the last decade, right, you can see in Asia, essentially, if you look at the compound annual growth rate is about 6.7%. But fast forward to another decade, right, in the next 10 years or so, right, we're going to see this number even increase to 8% compound annual growth rate, which is a very strong number that you are looking at. That's why everybody all over the world are excited to come to Asia to actually discover the opportunity. You don't have to look far, look at our parent company, Prudential. In the past, they have been really focused in the developed country. In the last couple of years, they start to do some demerger. They move away from the really crowded developed market, move to Asia to look for opportunity. Yeah. Now you look at the internet user in the key Asian market. Here I refer to a market like China, India, or Indonesia. Both India and Indonesia have a plan by 2030, right, to achieve a penetration about 80%. So from here, where they are to 80% is going to be a tremendous growth. So there will be a lot of infrastructure spending in those countries to upgrade their telecommunication sectors. Now, we have done a survey with a lot of the business leaders around the world, coming from US, Europe, or even in Asia itself, right? A lot of these C-level business leaders continue to think that India actually offers the most potential, and as a result of that, the transformation opportunity. Of course, China is important. They rank second, followed by Indonesia because of the infrastructure requirement and also because of the determinations to actually connect the people of Indonesia in terms of their financial condition. Yeah, if you look at Indonesia today, right, the penetration rate for their banking account or whatnot is still pretty low in the country. So we also see a lot of countries, for example, like Vietnam. When you look at Vietnam, you immediately think of China plus one, which is not true. China plus one can apply to any of the countries here in Asia. You can see a lot of the foreign direct investment also coming from the United States. Why they choose Malaysia? I think there's certain advantage over other countries as well. And of course, Indonesia have been very, very proactive in terms of getting China to work with them because they have the resources, they have they have these natural resources, for example, like the cobalt and the nickel, which is a key component input for the battery, the EV battery. So again, we are seeing a lot of opportunity here, not only on the traditional economic sector I just mentioned, like manufacturing, healthcare, and financial, and it has slowly moved to a lot of very innovative sector, for example, like digital economy, electric vehicles. I think if you look at the development in China today on the EV, it's amazing. Can I have a show of hands? How many of you are actually driving the BYD right now? Nobody? Then you better go and make an appointment to test drive the car. I had the opportunity to test drive the car. I'm considering it at the moment. It's really interesting because if you look at all the panel design, all the gadgets they have, right, for the price you are paying, right, it's definitely worth it. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Now, why Asia is important? Because if you look at the GDP growth as a percentage of the world GDP, right? As we speak today, probably Asia contributed about, I would say, 1/3. Yeah, moving forward to the next 10 years, the next decade, right? They're going to contribute more than 40% of that. Now, can you imagine from this 1/3 to about more than 40%? It's going to have a lot of opportunity for us as an asset manager to make some money. Yeah. Now, I talked quite a bit of the mega trend, and I want to take a step back to look at in Asia, right, how the GDP growth of each country has gone through in the last few decades. Now, somebody actually come up with this very I would say, very interesting diagram. It's called the flying geese. You know how geese actually fly, right? One will be the leader and the rest will follow. And when the leader gets tired, somebody comes along and take the lead, right? And this is exactly what happened in Asia. Now, if you look at the left side here, you will see the different color coding. This basically represents a different period throughout the history. You can see that it started from 1960. You can see definitely Japan in the 1960 to 70, right? They are the pioneer, the powerhouse of the economy in Asia. Now, as times go by, you can see, right? You have this Asia 5 tigers. Sorry, 4 of them. The other one is a little bit shy, so maybe he's a marathon runner, so he take a back seat. Yeah. So you can see when these 5 tigers sort of slow down, right? This is where China stepped up again. In the last 3 decades, China has really, really grown the economy in a big way. You can see the number in terms of their GDP growth, almost like double digit, right? Only recently it slowed down to 5%. Now, as they slow down, right, you can see some of these smaller Asian economy start to pick up the steam. You can see country like India is growing about 5.8%. Indonesia also stepping up. Vietnam, even for Malaysia, you know, the one got lost, right? The only tiger that got lost during the transitions. Yeah. So this is a very, very good story to share with you in terms of how Asia, with the diverse economy, right, can actually take a different stages in your investment cycle. Now, I want to quickly share with you in terms of the key social economic indicator. These are the driving force behind why we think Asia is important. More importantly, I think what we have done is we divided the Asia into North Asia and South Asia. You can see, essentially, the population in the North Asia is a little bit more matured, and they have already achieved certain economic growth, which is in terms of the GDP per capita is a lot higher than the South Asia. Now, this doesn't mean that the South Asia is not good. It just simply tells you that there are a lot of opportunity in the South Asia country like Indonesia, India, Vietnam, and the rest you can see from the chart here. Now, I also want to quickly share with you why this is important, because if you look at the second column, which is on the median age, right? This is not the average, this is a median. You know how the difference between the median and the average? The median age here basically shows you that it's right in the middle in terms of the values that you have, right? Now you can see, in general, in North Asia, they are older than the South Asia. Now, why this is important, I want to highlight this because if you look at the fundamental foundation for a sustainable GDP growth, right, you need younger populations. Yeah, so this is why this number here is so important. Yeah. Now, the GDP per capita is basically a measurement of your economic growth. So it's done quite well in the past for North Asia, and we think South Asia will start to do well. Now, Asia has been a key player and will continue to be a key player in terms of the global export, wealth creation, because of the rising of middle class, right? You can see the number of, the youngster, in India. They are just like, in terms of the working population, young population, right? In the next 10 years or so, right, they probably contribute to 50% of the world populations in the young working class. So what I want to share with you quickly is that you look at the 3 different sectors here. Export of goods and services. Now, for Asia, you can see the last decade was growing about compound annual growth rate about 2.4, but this rate is going to accelerate to about 8%, yeah, in the next decade. So, as long as the global growth do not slow down substantially or go into a recession, we think the export in Asia will continue to grow substantially. And more importantly, you look at this consumer expenditure. In the next decade, you're looking at 8% compound annual growth rate. Very, very strong, yeah. For Malaysia, I think if you look at Malaysia's retail sales number, right, we'll be happy to achieve about 4 to 5% on that. And more importantly, this is something really dominated by the Western country, which is a patent registration. When your product, when the services, right, you need to have a patent to protect it. Now, usually these are the game for the Westerner, but we are slowly seeing things are changing. Now, even as we speak today, right, the global patent registration in Asia already contributed more than 54% of that. So a lot of these are actually coming from a country like India, Korea, and Taiwan. Now, this is what we are trying to share with the public. Now, for you to participate in this region growing economy, right, the export, the consumer wealth, we think that the financial market is a way for you to expose yourself to take opportunity of that. Now, as a result of that, you can see the market capitalization for different countries in this region. Of course, you have China being the largest, in this region with about 11 trillion, yeah, and followed closely by Japan and Hong Kong and India. And if you look at India, the interesting part is that you can look at their growth rate in terms of market capitalization in the last 10 years or so. You're looking at double digit of 12%. So you sort of extrapolate that, right, in the next 10 years or so, right? We are not surprised to see, in terms of market capitalization in India will one day supersede, the Hong Kong and Japan. Now, let me just quickly share with you some statistics on how Asia will continue to drive this global growth in the next coming decade. Now, in the last 20 years, the contribution from Asia has been slightly below 50%, but fast forward to another 10 years, right, you are looking at about 57%. So from 49 to 57%, it is a very strong, about 12 to 14% sort of growth rate you are looking at. So what does it tell us? Now, this is basically the projection from the IMF. They are looking at, the global growth this year, yeah, as of April 2023, growing at about 2.5%. Now, out of this 2.5% global growth, right, China alone contributed close to 35%, and India another 15 or 16%. So combine the two, right, they basically contribute half of the global growth. Now, if you combine that with the rest of the Asia country, right, you're looking at about 60+%. Yeah, it is huge. It is major. That's why Asia is getting so important right now. Now, Asia being a regional hub for global export, of course, commodity prices are very, very important. As you can see from the chart here, right, post-pandemic, due to the pent-up demand, as well as during the start of the war between Russia and Ukraine, you can see the commodity prices actually shot up tremendously. But today, how many of you still pay attention to the war in Russia? That is like 1.5 years, It's a long process. It's almost as long as the pandemic itself. Yeah, and you can see things are slowly coming off in terms of the prices, and this is actually good for the exporting region like Asia. Now, I want to take a bit of time to talk about the infrastructure spending, which is very, very crucial for the Asia transformation story. Because at the end of the day, we are still a developing country. Most of the countries here are still developing, except for a few like Taiwan, Korea, Japan, right? For the rest of the Asian country, right, infrastructure spending is very, very important. Now, you can look at this chart here. I think what we have done is selectively choose some of the country, India plus an Asian country. Now, we look at the different period in terms of the government commitment as a percentage of the GDP on the infrastructure spending, right? You can see very clearly that they're actually on the rise, yeah? The number actually has slowly going up, yeah? But what about the collaboration between the private as well as the public? Now, we can look at this chart here on the right side. You can see China, you don't see a lot of private and the state government initiative. But countries like Indonesia, Philippines, India, and Vietnam, the partnership between the two is very, very strong. Now, take, for good example, Indonesia. Now, recently, you probably know about the news that the high-speed rail between Jakarta and Bandung is going to be operational. Now, even before they visualize that, Malaysia also have that, right? What happened to that? I mean, we have the Singapore and the Kuala Lumpur, the high-speed rail. Do we have the political will to do it? We don't. From the conception until the execution or implementation for Indonesia is such a short span of time, and that is really the effort of the collaboration between the public as well as the private sectors. Now, China, despite the geopolitical tension that they are facing, and despite the the restrictions imposed on them on the transfer of technology, you can see China continue to be very solid in terms of growing their export. Now, this chart basically shows you that in the last 5 years, right, how China actually has gained market share globally at the expense of the rest of the Western world. You can see China today contributed about 12.2% of the total world export, which is very, very substantial, yeah. Now, I think more importantly, they no longer export what? Your soft toys, your running shoes, The item they are export to the rest of the world have significantly changed over the year. You can see now, initially, they are quite strong in this E&E, electronic and electrical gadgets, right? But because of the trade tension, you can see some of this growth has actually sort of like fall off the cliff. But at the same time, you also have other sectors, for example, EV car. Now, on the daily basis, we continue to get a lot of news coming from China saying BYD is actually going to this country, going to that country to open new market. So there are a lot of, I think China is going to be the exporter of EV car for the coming decade. I think it's happening right now as we speak. So besides that, we also see a lot of some of this material like the battery as well as some of this solar. Now, by the way, Mr. Tan showed you that China basically one of the early adopter of the clean energy. They are really big in the wind and solar energy. Yeah? Now, this is where Eastspring thinks that going forward, right, the mega trend basically lies on the green, clean energy. Now, we strongly believe that if you look at some of the events that are happening in China right now, you can see, fast forward to 2030, right? In terms of the renewable energy, in terms of the contribution, right, they are going to achieve 57.4% of the global capacity by a single country. So there will be tremendous opportunity for the clean energy in China. Now, just quickly look at this chart here. I'm not going to spend a bit more time because I think the information are rather similar. China, it will basically take the market share away from the rest of the world in terms of the solar power. Now, in terms of the wind power, is also, they make a lot of commitment in such a way that you can see from now until 2030, right? You are going to see for wind capacity in terms of the growth, again, a very strong compound annual growth rate of 9%. So, a lot of things that we are seeing not only in China, but also in South Korea. I think one of the commitments the government recently made is that to develop this hydrogen economy. Basically, they want to, rather than depending on the EV, right, they also try to develop a new technology powered by hydrogen. Yeah? So you can see, even within Asia, there are a lot of new ideas, new innovations happening as we speak. Now, this is very, very interesting because usually, asset manager like us, we basically look at the broader market and we actually can slice and dice, to actually work on your products. Now you can see if you really want to look at sheer population, which are the 3 countries has the most population in this region and launch a product. You can launch an ICI fund, you can launch India, China and Indonesia. But you really like the idea of China and India, traditionally they are rival for the long time, and China slowly phasing out with the emerging of India, and you like to play the idea, you can actually come up with a fund called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Yeah, basically, and not only that, you can also do a lot of different permutation, for example, you can choose, a team just focus on technology. You can have, your South Korea and Taiwan. So what I'm saying is that within the Asia itself, right, there are a lot of possibility and a lot of investment team you can continue to rotate for the long-term investment opportunity. Now, Mr. Tan also talked about the valuation, but I'm going to just quickly share with you. In terms of China, it is very, very attractive at the moment. Yeah, it's actually trading at one standard deviation below the long-term average, you know, be it on the price per book or PE 12-month forward ratio. But within this Asia, right, we find one country which is quite interesting. Probably speaker this morning talks about it, Japan. Now, for the first time, we are seeing the manager in Japan, right, start paying attention to profitability. Because for the longest time, right, a lot of the manager in Japan don't really focus on that, because we can look at this chart here. You know, can you imagine your profit margin as a percentage of your sales, right? It's only 2 to 3%. How to make money? I mean, how do you as a shareholder think about it? But there are a lot of structural changes in the last couple of years in Japan, and we are seeing a lot of these managers start to look at this number. And not only they are improving in terms of their profit margin as a percentage of sales, right? Now, if you look at this chart, you're looking at a long-term trend, and it looks pretty good, right? But by the way, by the world standard, this is still pretty below the average. Yeah, they should continue to improve, probably close to, I would say, high single digit to low double digit kind of profit margin. So you are still looking at Japan as a potential market for further upside. And more importantly, I think they start to pay a lot of attention to please their shareholder, for example, like share buyback and giving dividends. So these are the real structural changes we are seeing in Japan at the moment. Now, with that, I just want to quickly sum up my presentation here. In essence, what we think that, you know, in Asia, right, it is a lot of diverse economy. I mean, they are all in a different cycle of their economic development, a lot of opportunity. But moving forward the next decade, right, we strongly believe export is a key component. We strongly believe consumption, domestic consumption within some of this big economy in Asia will continue to drive this economic growth. And more importantly, a lot of the policy makers here in Asia continue to have very accommodative policy action to support the businesses. So with that, I think if you are looking at the investment which have a lot more broader market perspective, right, Asia is not a bad region to consider, rather than focus a very specific investment theme or sector. So with that, I thank you very much, and thanks for your time.